manager is always going to have to manage or navigate team dynamics without becoming piggy in the middle. How does the manager create an environment that encourages team members to resolve interpersonal dynamics?
In answering that question, I'm going to use the example of myself as a coach working with all of the individuals in a team. One of the things that I will tell the team up front is all of you are going to talk to me about all the others. And when you talk to me about your colleagues, they will not be in the room. We will only be working with you. And my only interest in entertaining that topic of conversation is to help you find a way to address the interpersonal issue yourself. The absolute same thing is true of a manager. All of your team members will talk to you about other team members at some point. And when they are talking to you about problems that they are having with another team member, the last thing that you want to do is fall into the trap of stepping in the middle and end up trying to broker solutions back and forth for your team members. It is completely appropriate for a manager to have a conversation with a team member about difficulties that that team member is having with a colleague, provided that the intention of the conversation is for the team member to figure out how to resolve the issue with the colleague. We don't want to create the kind of situation where it's almost like a running to mom scenario where the team member brings the problem to the team leader and the team leader tries to resolve it with the other team member. That's not what we're looking for. We're looking for, and again, it goes back to that psychological safety that keeps coming up, is we want to create the kind of psychological safety in a team that enables and encourages team members to resolve their own issues with each other.
So often we find that interpersonal dynamics are based on underlying assumptions, which may or may not be correct. So what strategies do you have for managers who are dealing with this?
I think that one of the really important watchwords, if you like, for the manager is that your team members' perspective on what might be going on between them and a colleague is based on the assumptions they might be making about what their colleague's behavior means. And so often you will hear your team member saying things like, he's obviously just trying to make me look bad, or, well, they're just trying to blame our team. And your leadership role, coaching role, if you like, in this context, is to help your team member to test those assumptions. Is that really what's going on? Could there be anything else going on? Could that behavior have absolutely nothing to do with you and be all about what's going on for the other team member? And if you can, as one example, enable members of your team to be more compassionate in attempting to understand what's going on for their colleagues and less concerned that their colleagues' behavior is somehow aimed at them or says something about them, you will find that there's a great deal more calm in the team. People tend to get very uptight and very worked up based on their assumptions that somebody else's behavior is intended as harming them in some way or retaliating in some way, or somehow it's got something to do with me. But most often, when colleagues are being unhelpful in some way, it's because there's something going on for them. There's something they're struggling with. There is something that they are feeling stressed out by. And my experience is that when we test those assumptions and we discover that it might have nothing to do with me at all, it becomes much easier to deal with the issues.
You have spoken and written in the past about the importance of being able to have courageous conversations. And this sounds to me like it would fall into that category of conversation between manager and team member. So how would you categorize or characterize an ideal courageous conversation?
I think the starting point is to understand what is a courageous conversation. A courageous conversation is one where the subject matter might be hard to hear. There might be an emotional reaction, but it needs to be shared. So the courage is around a certain amount of personal courage. I am putting myself out there in being willing to have the conversation in the first place. I am accepting that there's a certain amount of risk because I don't know what your reaction is going to be. I believe I have a responsibility to share the feedback, the information with you, despite the fact that I don't know what the outcome's going to be. And it might be deeply uncomfortable. So I think that that's what makes a conversation courageous, is it's going to be tricky to have and it's going to be tricky to hear. But it's very necessary to do so. In actually having the courageous conversation, if there is a foundation of a good, caring, candid relationship, the prospect of having successful, courageous conversations is enhanced.
It sounds to me like being a manager can be quite challenging and tough, and there are certainly skills that managers can develop to make it easier to navigate this whole.
You raised something so important there, and that is that the manager, the developing leader, is always learning. And we get so busy in the doing that we often don't take time out to reflect on where we need to learn. What are we finding difficult? What are we about to have to do? And we don't know how to do it. What conversation are we about to have? And I've never had to have a conversation like this before. Or I've never been comfortable with this kind of conversation. It goes back to what we were talking about in a previous clip, which was about reflection and growing self-awareness and willingness to learn. As a manager and a leader, you're never there. You're always on your way there, and there is always moving.
And you also spoke about those very, very important appointments with yourself.
Yes.
Making sure that you don't miss them.
Yes.
Well, thanks, Belinda. That was very valuable and informative. And on to the next clip.
Yes, indeed.